For 12 years, my husband left the house every Saturday at exactly 9:15. Not earlier, not later, 9:15. At first, I never questioned it. Why would I? We lived in North Scottsdale, in a quiet, gated neighborhood where everything looked controlled. Clean streets, perfect houses, the kind of place where nothing ever seemed out of place. Our home matched that image. White stone floors, a wide quartz kitchen island, glass doors that let in too much light during the day, and not enough warmth at night. My husband, Victor Hayes, worked with people who never had to worry about money. He managed their investments, their portfolios, their future. And for a long time, I believed he was managing ours just as carefully. We had 2 children. Our daughter was finishing college in California. Our son was 16, still at home, still somewhere between needing us and pushing us away. And me, I held everything together: schedules, meals, the quiet details no one notices until they stop happening. From the outside, we looked solid. Inside, it was quieter than it should have been. Every Saturday followed the same pattern. Victor would come downstairs already dressed, not fully formal, not casual either, just enough to look like he could be going anywhere. He would pick up his leather portfolio by the door, then he would find me, always. A quick kiss on my cheek, a light touch on my shoulder. I'll be back in a few hours. Sometimes it was a client meeting, sometimes a review, sometimes just something he needed to handle. The explanation changed. The timing never did, 9:15. I used to watch him leave. Standing by the kitchen window, coffee in hand, I'd see his car back out slowly, pause at the gate, then disappear into the same quiet street. And just like that, the house would shift. Not louder, not emptier, just different. Like something had been removed that I couldn't quite name. At first, I filled that space without thinking. Laundry, emails, groceries, normal things. By the time he came back, everything looked the same again, except for one detail. He never came home empty-handed. There was always something. Pastries from a place downtown, a bottle of wine. Once, a silk scarf still wrapped in paper, like it had been picked up without much thought. At first, I thought it was sweet. Then, I started noticing the pattern. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like balance. Like something was being compensated for. I remember the exact moment that thought formed. I was standing at the kitchen counter, opening a box of macarons he had brought home. Perfect colors. Too perfect. He watched me. "From that place you like," he said. I smiled. I thanked him. But something felt off. Not wrong, just arranged. After that, I couldn't stop seeing it. The way he angled his phone away slightly when it lit up. The way his stories became shorter, cleaner, less detailed. The way he asked about my day, just enough to seem present, but never enough to actually listen. Nothing obvious, nothing I could prove. Just a shift. Small enough to ignore, clear enough to feel. I told myself I was overthinking. 12 years of marriage doesn't fall apart over a feeling. So I stayed quiet. I stayed reasonable. I stayed normal. And the Saturdays kept coming, 9:15, every week, until one morning, everything looked exactly the same. Victor came downstairs, dressed the same way, holding the same portfolio. He kissed my cheek. "I'll be back in a few hours." I nodded, like always. I watched him walk out the door. He closed it gently behind him. A few seconds later, I heard his car start, then fade away. I turned back toward the kitchen, and that's when I heard it. A vibration, low, sharp, out of place. I looked down at the counter, and for a moment, my brain didn't register what I was seeing. Victor's phone, face down, still vibrating. He never forgot his phone, not once in 12 years. The sound stopped, then started again, louder this time, more insistent. I stepped closer. Slowly, my hand hovered above it. I wasn't going to touch it. I had never gone through his phone. Not once. Not ever. The screen lit up, and before I could stop myself, I saw it. No name, just one letter, L. The phone kept ringing. I I stared at it, and something inside me, quiet, steady, shifted. I reached down and picked it up. The phone felt heavier than it should have, warm from the counter, still vibrating in my hand. For a second, I just stood there. Then I swiped to answer. I didn't speak. Neither did she, at first. There was a brief pause on the other end. Not confusion, not hesitation, recognition. "You're late," she said. Her voice was calm, low, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten, like this was a conversation she'd had many times before. I said nothing. She exhaled softly, almost amused. "Victor, don't tell me you're going to stall again. We've already pushed this far." Stall. Push this far. Not the words of someone waiting for a husband, not the tone of someone sneaking around. This was something else. I kept breathing, slow and quiet, afraid even the sound of it would give me away. "You have the documents, right?" she continued. "We can't keep moving money without final signatures." Money. Documents. My fingers tightened slightly around the phone. Still, I didn't answer. Another pause. Then her voice shifted, just slightly. "Call me when you're 10 minutes out," she said. "I'll be ready." The line went dead. Silence filled the kitchen again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one had weight. I stood there, staring at the screen long after it went dark. Then slowly, I turned the phone over. My reflection stared back at me for a split second before it faded. I told myself I should put it down, that this was already too far. But my hand didn't move. Instead, my thumb unlocked the screen. No hesitation this time. If there was a line, I had already crossed it. The home screen looked normal. Too normal. Calendar reminders, market updates, a few unread emails, nothing that explained what I had just heard. I opened the call log. The number was there. No name, just the same letter. L. Multiple calls, not just today. Every Saturday. Same time window. My chest tightened, but my thoughts stayed clear. Too clear. I tapped the message icon. At first, it looked empty. Then I noticed it, a folder I had never seen before, hidden behind a generic label. Archive. I opened it, and that's when everything shifted. There were no casual texts, no small talk, only files, PDF attachments, scanned documents, encrypted links, thread after thread of communication that didn't read like a relationship. It read like a system. I opened one file, then another. Legal formatting, financial language, account structures I didn't fully understand, but recognized enough to know they weren't simple. And then I saw my name, Margaret Hayes, not in a message, in a document, typed, formal, permanent. I froze, scrolled back, opened another file. There it was again. My name listed under a section labeled Trustee. I stopped breathing for a second. That didn't make sense. I had never agreed to anything like this, never signed anything, never even discussed it. My fingers moved faster now, file after file. My name, again and again. Different documents, same role, as if I had been involved for years. A cold, precise understanding began forming in my mind, not emotional, not panicked, just clear. This wasn't about a woman. This wasn't about a secret relationship. This was something structured, planned, built over time. And somehow, I was inside it, without ever knowing. I leaned back against the counter, the edge pressing into my spine. The house around me felt unfamiliar, like I was standing in someone else's life. I opened one more file, this one labeled differently, Cross Structure. My thumb hovered for a moment, then I tapped it open. More documents, more accounts, more movement, money, large amounts shifting between entities I didn't recognize. And threaded through all of it, that same name, Lena Cross, the letter on the screen, L, the voice on the phone. Everything connected in a single, quiet moment. I wasn't looking at an affair. I was looking at something much bigger, something deliberate, something dangerous. I locked the phone. set it back down exactly where I had found it, face down, just like before. Then I stood there, completely still, trying to feel something, shock, anger, fear. But what came instead was something else, something colder. If this was what it looked like, then this wasn't just his secret, it was now mine too. And if it went wrong, I wouldn't just lose my marriage, I could lose everything. I glanced toward the front door, empty, quiet, exactly as it had been every Saturday. Only now, I understood. Nothing about those mornings had ever been simple, and whatever Victor was doing had been happening for a very long time. I picked up my coffee, took a sip. It had gone completely cold. I didn't notice. All I could think was, I needed to know everything, and I needed to do it without him ever realizing I had started looking. I didn't touch his phone again after that, not because I didn't want to, but because I understood something important. Whatever I had just seen was only a fragment, and fragments can be dangerous. If I reacted too soon, if I asked the wrong question, if I showed even the smallest shift, Victor would know. So I put the phone back exactly where it had been. Face down, angle unchanged, like nothing had happened. Then I moved through the house the way I always did. I rinsed my coffee cup, wiped the counter, checked the laundry, normal things. My hands worked on their own. My mind didn't. It kept replaying the same images. My name, trustee, documents I had never signed. By the time Victor came back, I was ready, not emotionally, but strategically. I heard his car before I saw it, the same slow approach, the same pause at the gate. I stood at the sink, drying a glass that was already dry. The door opened. "Hey," he said, like nothing had changed. "Hey," I answered. He walked in, set his portfolio down, and placed a small white box on the counter. "Picked this up on the way back." Of course he did. I glanced at it. Pastries, perfectly arranged, too perfect. "Thanks," I said. He watched me for a second, just a second, but long enough for me to feel it, that quiet assessment, like he was checking something. I kept my expression neutral, relaxed. The same woman he had left that morning. He nodded slightly, satisfied. Then he picked up his phone, a small movement. But I saw it, the way his eyes flicked across the screen, checking, scanning, nothing out of place, because I had made sure of it. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Why wouldn't it be?" He held my gaze for a moment longer, then he smiled. "Good." That was it. No tension, no suspicion, which told me something even more important. He didn't know, not yet. That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay in bed beside him, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. And I thought, not about the marriage, not about the betrayal, about the structure, about what I had seen, because the more I replayed it, the clearer it became. This wasn't random, it wasn't messy, it was organized. Legal language, financial pathways, defined roles, and somehow I had been assigned one, without ever agreeing to it. Around 2 a.m., I got out of bed, careful not to wake him. I went downstairs, opened my laptop, and sat at the kitchen island. The house was silent, the kind of silence that makes every small sound feel louder. I typed his name first, Victor Hayes, then the firm he worked for, then variations, nothing unusual, professional profiles, client testimonials, clean, too clean. I stared at the screen. Then I typed something else. Lena Cross. Search. This time, results. LinkedIn profile. Marketing director. Corporate branding. High-end consulting clients. Professional. Polished. Nothing that connected her to anything illegal. Nothing that connected her to me, which made it worse, because it meant whatever they were doing, was hidden well. I scrolled further. Images, public records, business mentions, and then a small detail, an address, not listed directly, but referenced in a business registration, North Scottsdale. Close, too close. I leaned back slightly. My heart was steady, too steady. That same clarity again, cold, focused. If I wanted the truth, I wasn't going to get it from Google, and I definitely wasn't going to get it from Victor. I needed someone who understood what I was looking at, someone who could read those documents and tell me exactly how bad it was. By morning, I had made the decision. I would not confront him, not yet, because this wasn't just about what he had done. It was about what he had pulled me into. And if I made the wrong move, I could lose control of both. Victor left for work like any other day. Coffee, keys, routine, a kiss on my cheek. "See you tonight." I smiled. "See you." The door closed. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then I went upstairs, got dressed, grabbed my bag, and left the house. Not to a friend, not to clear my head, to find a lawyer, not for divorce, not yet. Something else, something much more precise. Because if my name was already inside that system, I needed to know exactly how to get it out before everything came down with it. The office didn't look like what I expected. No glass walls, no polished marble lobby, just a quiet building off a side street, the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it, which I realized was probably the point. I sat in my car for a full minute before going in, not because I was unsure, but because I understood. Once I walked through that door, this became real. Not suspicion, not instinct, reality. I stepped out, closed the door, and went inside. The receptionist barely looked up when I gave my name. She nodded, asked me to wait, then disappeared behind a hallway. Everything felt controlled. Muted tones, soft lighting, no unnecessary noise. A few minutes later, a woman stepped out, mid-50s, calm, focused. "Margaret Hayes?" I stood. "Yes. I'm Allison Reed. Come with me." Her office was simple. Desk, 2 chairs, no clutter. She didn't offer small talk, just sat down, opened a notebook, and looked at me. "What do you think is happening?" she asked. "Not what happened. What do you think is happening?" I took a breath. "My husband is moving money through accounts I don't recognize," I said. "My name appears on documents I've never signed." She didn't react, didn't interrupt. "Do you have copies?" she asked. "Not yet." "Do you have access?" I hesitated. "Yes." She nodded once. "Then don't touch anything else until we do this properly." There was no alarm in her voice, no urgency, which made what she said next land even harder. "If your name is attached to financial structures you didn't authorize," she continued, "then this isn't a marriage issue." She paused. "This is exposure." The word settled into the room. Exposure. Not betrayal. Not infidelity. Risk. "What kind of exposure?" I asked. She studied me for a moment. "Best case?" she said. "You're a name on paper. You can distance yourself." "And worst?" She didn't hesitate. "You're considered a participating party." My fingers tightened slightly in my lap. "I didn't sign anything." "That helps," she said. "But it's not enough on its own." Silence stretched between us. I kept my voice steady. "What do I need to do?" That seemed to be the question she had been waiting for. "First," she said, "we verify everything. Quietly." She leaned forward slightly. "No confrontation, no changes in behavior, no financial movement." I nodded. "I can do that." "Second," she continued, "we bring in a forensic accountant." The words were precise, measured. "He'll trace the flow of money," she said, "where it comes from, where it goes, and how your name is being used. And then," she closed the notebook, "then we decide whether you're protecting yourself," she held my gaze, "or preparing to take him down." The room felt very still, not tense, just clear. I understood exactly what she meant, and for the first time since that morning, I felt something shift. Not fear, not yet. Control. "How long will this take?" I asked. "Days to understand the structure," she said. "Weeks to build a case." A case, not a conversation, not a misunderstanding, something formal, something real. I nodded slowly. Okay. She studied me again like she was measuring something I hadn't said out loud. You're handling this well, she said. I don't think I have a choice. A small pause. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Good, she said. Because this only works if you stay exactly who he thinks you are. That landed. Harder than anything else she had said. Not because it was complicated, but because it was simple. I had to keep being his wife, the version of me he trusted, the version that didn't ask questions, the version that stayed quiet. I stood to leave. She handed me a card. Don't call from your home phone, she said, and don't email from any shared device. I took it. Understood. Outside, the sunlight felt too bright, too normal. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing steady. The world hadn't changed, but my position in it had. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't imagining things. This was real, and whatever Victor had built was bigger than I had thought. I drove home slowly, not because I needed time, but because I was already thinking ahead, what I needed, what I could access, what I had missed. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked exactly the same. The house, the windows, the quiet. I walked inside, set my bag down, and moved through the kitchen like I always did. Nothing out of place. Nothing disturbed, except now, I knew what I was standing inside. Not just a home, a system, one that had been running for years, without me, and somehow, through me. I poured myself a glass of water, took a sip, then set it down, carefully, because from this moment on, every move mattered, and I wasn't going to make a single one by accident. I didn't go looking for her right away, not because I wasn't curious, but because I understood something now. Curiosity makes mistakes, and I couldn't afford any. For 3 days, I did exactly what Allison told me. Nothing. On the outside. Inside. Everything was moving. Victor stayed the same schedule, same tone, same careful version of himself. If anything, he seemed slightly more attentive. Not enough to stand out, just enough to notice. He asked about my day. He lingered a second longer in the kitchen. Once he stood behind me, both hands resting lightly on my shoulders. Everything okay? He asked. I nodded. Of course. He smiled, but his eyes stayed on me a moment longer than usual, measuring, not suspecting, just aware. I held the same expression, warm, calm, unchanged. Eventually he let it go, which told me he didn't know. But something had shifted, and he could feel it. That was the first time I realized this wasn't just about hiding what I knew. It was about controlling what he felt. By the end of the week, Allison called. Come in, she said. We've started mapping it. I drove there without thinking twice. This time, I didn't hesitate in the parking lot. I went straight in. She was already waiting. So was someone else. A man in his 60s, quiet, composed, with a stack of printed documents in front of him. This is Daniel Brooks, she said. Forensic accounting. He gave a small nod. I sat down. No small talk, no easing in. He slid the first document toward me. Your husband is running funds through a layered structure, he said. His voice was steady, clinical. Multiple entities. Primary one is a Delaware LLC. From there, money is routed into private investment pools. He tapped the page. Some legitimate, some not. I looked at the numbers. Even without fully understanding them, I knew they were too large to ignore. How long? I asked. Minimum 8 years, he said. 8 years. My son had been 8 years old. My daughter, 10. I didn't react. Not outwardly. And my name? I asked. He flipped to another page. There it was, again. Margaret Hayes. Listed as trustee on multiple internal documents, he said, which suggests authorization. I didn't authorize anything. I believe you, he said. A brief pause. Unfortunately, the documents don't reflect that. The room felt smaller, not suffocating, just tighter. Can you prove the signatures are fake? I asked. Possibly, he said. But that's not the only issue. He leaned back slightly. The structure uses your name as a stabilizing element. It gives the appearance of shared oversight. I understood what he meant. I wasn't just included. I was part of the design, a layer of protection, a shield. For him. My stomach tightened, just slightly. What about her? I asked. Allison glanced at Daniel. He nodded. Another document. Another name. Lena Cross. Connected to the external side of the operation, he said. Marketing. Client-facing positioning. Does she know? I asked. He paused. Not fully, he said. From what we can tell, she believes this is an aggressive but legal investment model. So she wasn't just a mistress, she was inside it, but not all the way. I sat back slightly. Everything was aligning now. The calls, the documents, the structure. This wasn't two separate lives. It was one system, with different roles, and mine had been assigned without my consent. How much? I asked quietly. Daniel didn't hesitate. Approximately 2.4 million, he said. The number landed clean. No shock, no disbelief, just confirmation. This was real. Bigger than I had imagined, more controlled than I had feared, and far more dangerous. What happens if this gets exposed? I asked. Allison answered this time. Best case, she said. Civil liability, financial damage. And worst? Criminal investigation. Silence. I let that settle. Not panic, not yet, just wait. And me? I asked. She held my gaze. That depends on what we can prove, she said. And what you do next. There it was, the line. Not the one I crossed when I answered the phone. The one in front of me now. What are my options? I asked. Allison didn't look at her notes. She didn't need to. You continue exactly as you are, she said. We gather everything, quietly. She paused. Or, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I already knew. Expose him. Or protect myself. Possibly both. Possibly neither. I looked down at the documents again. My name. Repeated, embedded, used, for years, without me knowing. I lifted my eyes, calm, clear. What do you need from me? I asked. Daniel slid a short list across the table. Access, he said. Anything you can safely provide. Statements, devices, patterns. I nodded. I can do that. Allison watched me for a moment, then gave a small, almost approving nod. Good, she said. As I stood to leave, she added one more thing. Don't underestimate this, she said. He didn't build it by accident. I understood. Outside, the air felt warmer than before. Or maybe I just noticed it now. I got into my car and sat still for a second. Not overwhelmed, not frozen, focused. Because now I knew. This wasn't just about finding the truth. It was about deciding what to do with it. And somewhere, not far from my house, there was a woman named Lena Cross. A woman who thought she understood what she was part of, but didn't. Not completely. And sooner or later, our paths were going to cross. The first time I drove past her house, I didn't stop. I told myself I was just getting a sense of the area. North Scottsdale, same as ours, same quiet streets, same controlled calm. The house was modern, clean lines, neutral colors. Nothing about it stood out, which made it stand out even more. I slowed just enough to see the driveway, a silver SUV, different from ours, but familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I kept driving, didn't turn around, didn't linger, because this wasn't about her, not yet. This was about understanding the structure and where I stood inside it. That night, Victor came home later than usual, not dramatically late, just enough to shift the pattern. "Long day," he said, setting his keys down. I looked up from the kitchen. "You okay?" He nodded, but there was something slightly off in his tone. Tighter, more controlled. "I had to handle something," he added. I held his gaze, for a second longer than normal. Then I nodded. "Of course." He watched me, not suspicious, just searching, like he was trying to read something that wasn't there. Then he looked away. The moment passed, but I felt it. Something had changed. Not in what he knew, but in what he sensed. Over the next few days, I became more careful, not just with what I did, but with how I existed around him, the way I moved through rooms, the way I answered questions, the timing of my responses. Everything had to match the version of me he expected, not too distant, not too attentive, exactly the same. It was exhausting, but necessary. By Thursday, Daniel sent an update, secure email, short message. "We've confirmed signature inconsistencies." I read it twice. Then again, proof, not complete, but enough to matter. A second message followed. "There's more. Call when safe." I didn't call from the house. I drove. 10 minutes away, parked outside a grocery store I never used. Then I dialed. He answered immediately. "We traced additional flows," he said. "No greeting, no buildup. Funds are being routed through secondary accounts tied to the same structure." "How much?" I asked. A brief pause. "Closer to 3 million, he said. 3 million. The number didn't shock me. What shocked me was how calm I felt hearing it. "That changes the exposure," he continued, "significantly." "For him," I said. "And for you," he replied. Silence. Cars moved in the parking lot around me, people going in and out, normal life, completely untouched by what I was sitting inside. "What do we do next?" I asked. "We keep building," he said, "but there's something you need to understand." His voice shifted slightly, more deliberate. "If this breaks publicly, your name will be part of it, at least initially." I didn't sign anything. "I know, but perception comes first. Proof comes later." That landed, harder than the number, because it was true. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them again. "What's the timeline?" I asked. "Hard to say," he said, "but structures like this don't hold forever." Meaning, it wasn't a question of if, just when. And when it happened, everything would come down at once. I ended the call and sat there for a moment, hands resting loosely on the steering wheel, breathing steady. No panic, just clarity. This wasn't something I could step away from. Not quietly, not safely. I was already inside it. The only question was how I got out, or what I took down with me. That night, I barely spoke. Victor didn't push, which told me something else. He was distracted, not by me, by something else, by pressure, by movement inside the system I had just begun to understand. And for the first time, I realized something important. He wasn't as in control as I had always believed. Not completely, which meant this could break. And when it did, I needed to be ready. Not as his wife, not as part of his life, but as someone who could step away, clean, or if necessary, be the one who made sure it collapsed. I went upstairs early, closed the bedroom door, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the silence settle around me, because the truth was, this wasn't just about what he had done. It was about what I was willing to do next. And for the first time since all of this began, I understood exactly how much power I had. Not emotional, not reactive, strategic, quiet, precise. I lay down beside him later that night. He was already asleep, or pretending to be. I couldn't tell. But it didn't matter anymore, because whatever this was, whatever he had built, was no longer something happening around me. It was something I was now inside, fully. And whether he realized it or not, I was no longer just part of the structure. I was the one thing inside it he couldn't control. By the second week, I stopped reacting, not because it didn't matter, but because reaction had no value anymore. Information did, patterns did, timing did. Everything else was noise. I started paying attention differently, not to what Victor said, to what he didn't. The gaps, the moments between sentences, the pauses before answers. That's where the truth lived. Saturday came again, 9:15, same routine, same kiss on my cheek. I'll be back in a few hours. I smiled. Okay. I didn't watch him leave this time. I didn't need to. I already knew where he was going and what he thought he was doing. Instead, I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and opened my laptop. Daniel had sent new files, more detailed, more complete. I scrolled through transaction logs, dates, amounts, transfers layered across multiple accounts. At first glance, it looked legitimate, structured, professional. But underneath, it was too clean, too controlled. Money moving in loops, returning under different names, masked. I didn't understand every detail, but I understood enough. This wasn't aggressive investing. This was manipulation, deliberate, sustained. And then, I saw something new. A set of emails, not documents, communication, between Victor and Lena. I opened one, then another. There was no romance, no affection, only language built around coordination, timing, execution. Shift phase 2 after confirmation. Delay client reporting until end of cycle. Keep visibility limited. I read them slowly, carefully. And then, one line stopped me. We'll finalize once she's in position. She. I stared at the screen, scrolled up, read the thread again. Different context, same reference. She, not Lena, someone else. Or, I felt the realization before I fully formed it. Me. They were talking about me. Not directly, not by name, but clearly enough. My role, my position. Something that needed to be set, stabilized. I leaned back slightly. Heart steady, mind clearer than ever. I wasn't just included, I had been placed, deliberately, as part of the structure, without knowing, without agreeing. A quiet breath left my chest. Not shock, recognition. That's when I understood the final piece. Victor hadn't just used my name, he had built around it, made me essential, a layer that made everything look legitimate. A wife, a trustee, a stabilizing presence, invisible, until needed. I closed the laptop slowly, sat there in silence, and for the first time, I allowed the full weight of it to settle, not emotionally, strategically, because this changed everything. Before, I had options. Now, I had leverage, real leverage, because if I stepped forward, everything connected to my name would unravel. And if it unraveled, it wouldn't just touch him, it would expose the entire system. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the empty street, sunlight across perfectly trimmed lawns, nothing out of place, everything quiet, but underneath, structures I couldn't see, lives I didn't know, and one system that I now understood completely. I checked the time, 10:42. He would still be there, with her, working, planning, believing everything was under control. That thought didn't make me angry, it made me focused, because for the first time, he was wrong, completely wrong. I wasn't behind, I wasn't guessing. I was ahead, and he had no idea. That afternoon, when he came home, I was in the kitchen. Same place, same posture, same version of me. He walked in, set his things down, placed a small bag on the counter. "Got you something," he said. I looked at it, didn't open it. "Thanks." He watched me, a second longer than usual. "You okay?" he asked. There it was again, that question, soft, casual, but not random. I met his eyes, held them. "I'm fine." And for the first time, I didn't soften the answer. I didn't adjust it to make him comfortable. I just said it. Clean. Direct. He paused. Just slightly, then nodded. Good. He picked up his phone. Checked it. Everything in place. Everything exactly how he left it. Because I had made sure of that. He relaxed. Not visibly, but enough. I turned back to the counter. Opened the bag. Pastries. Of course. Perfect. Unnecessary? Predictable? I closed the box, set it aside, and in that moment, I made the decision. I wasn't going to react. I wasn't going to confront. Not yet. Because now, I wasn't trying to understand what he was doing. I already knew. Now, I was deciding what to do with it, and how much of it I was willing to destroy. Victor was served on a Tuesday, 2:18 in the afternoon. I know the exact time because Allison texted me. He's been notified. No explanation, no details, just that. I was at my desk when I read it. A normal Tuesday? Emails, scheduling, background noise. Nothing about the moment felt dramatic, which made it sharper, more real. I locked my phone, finished the email I was writing, then sat there for a few seconds, hands still on the keyboard. Not shaking, not frozen, just steady. By the time I got home, his car was already in the driveway. That was new. He was usually later. I walked inside. He was in the kitchen, standing exactly where I had been standing that morning. For a second, we just looked at each other. His face was controlled. Too controlled. "Margaret," he said. Not Maggie. Margaret. That told me everything. I set my bag down slowly. "Yes? You want to explain this?" he asked. No anger, no raised voice, just precision. "I think you already understand it," I said. A small pause, then his jaw tightened. "So you've been looking into me." Not a question, a statement. "I've been protecting myself," I replied. That landed. I saw it. A shift behind his eyes. Not guilt, not fear, calculation. "How much do you think you know?" he asked quietly. I held his gaze. Enough. Silence stretched between us, heavy, measured. Then he exhaled, not defeated, resetting. "Okay," he said. "Then let's be practical." Of course. That was who he was. Not emotional. Strategic. "This doesn't need to become something messy," he continued. "We can resolve this quickly, quietly. Resolve. Like this was a misunderstanding. Like this was negotiable." "I'm not negotiating in the kitchen," I said. Another pause. His expression shifted again, sharper this time. "Then where?" "My attorney will contact yours." There it was. The line. Clear. Final. For the first time, I saw it hit him. Not fully, but enough. Because this wasn't the version of me he knew. This wasn't the version he had built his system around. This was something else. Something he hadn't accounted for. He took a step closer, lowered his voice. "Margaret, think carefully about what you're doing." I didn't move. "I have." Another silence. Then he nodded once. Slow, controlled. "All right," he said. And just like that, the conversation ended. No explosion, no confession. Just two people standing in a kitchen that no longer meant the same thing. That night, he stayed in his office. Door closed. Phone calls, low voices, movement. I didn't listen. I didn't need to. The system was reacting, adjusting, trying to contain what had already started to break. 3 days later, she called me. Unknown number, mid-morning. I was alone in the house. I answered. "Margaret Hayes?" Her voice was exactly how I remembered. Calm, measured. Lena Cross. "Yes." A brief pause. "I think we should talk." "I don't." Another pause. Longer this time. "I don't think you understand the situation," she said. I almost smiled. "I understand it very well." "I don't think you do," she continued, a little sharper now. "Victor and I have been building something for years. There it was, her version, her belief. "This doesn't have to become a legal disaster," she added. "We can work this out in a way that protects everyone." Protects everyone. Interesting choice of words. "Does it?" I asked. Silence. Then, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No," I said calmly. "I'm making it accurate." That stopped her, for a second. Then she shifted tone, softer, more persuasive. "You're going to lose more than you think if this escalates." I leaned back slightly in my chair. "Am I?" "Yes," she said. "Financially, legally, personally." I let the silence sit. Then I asked one question. "Did he tell you everything?" A pause. Not long, but enough. "What do you mean?" she asked. There it was, the crack. Small, but real. I didn't push. Not yet. "You should ask him," I said. Her voice tightened. "I already have." "Then ask again." Silence. This time longer. Different. Because now, something had shifted. Not in me. In her. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said finally. I stood up, walked to the kitchen window, looked out at the same quiet street. "No," I said. "I'm ending one." I ended the call, set the phone down, and stood there for a moment. Still, because that conversation had confirmed something important. She didn't know. Not everything. Not even close. Victor hadn't just built one lie. He had built two. Separate. Controlled. And now, both were starting to collapse. I took a slow breath. Let it out. Because from this point on, it wasn't just about exposure. It was about impact. Who fell? How hard? And what was left standing after? The hearing wasn't dramatic. No raised voices, no sudden confessions. Just a room, a judge, 2 tables facing forward. And the truth, laid out piece by piece. I sat beside Allison, hands folded, posture steady. Across from me, Victor looked different. Not broken, not yet, but reduced. Smaller than the man I had lived with for 12 years. His attorney spoke first. Measured tone, clean language. "Complex financial structures," he said. "Misinterpretations. Administrative overlap. Words designed to soften, to blur, to delay." I listened, calm, detached, because I already knew. None of it would hold. When it was Allison's turn, she didn't argue. She presented. Documents, transactions, timelines, each one placed carefully, deliberately, no emotion, no exaggeration, just facts. Daniel followed. Quiet, precise. He walked through the flow of money step by step, from client accounts into layered entities through structures that looked legitimate, until they didn't. He explained the patterns, the repetition, the intent, not speculation, not theory, evidence. Then, my name appeared. Again, on record, trustee, beneficiary, positioned inside the structure. But this time, it was different, because now there was context. Signature analysis, authorization gaps, document inconsistencies, clear enough, strong enough to separate me from what had been built around me. I didn't look at Victor, not once. I didn't need to. I could feel it, the shift, the moment when control leaves someone and doesn't come back. The judge asked questions, not many, just enough, specific, direct, the kind of questions that don't need long answers. Victor's attorney responded, carefully, but slower now, less certain, because the structure was no longer holding. When it ended, nothing was declared out loud. No final statement, no dramatic conclusion, just process. Next steps, further review. But the outcome was already clear. Outside the courtroom, the air felt different, lighter. Not because anything had been resolved, but because it had been exposed. Victor approached me in the hallway. For a second, I considered walking past him, but I didn't. I stopped. He looked at me. Really looked this time. No control, no calculation, just something raw. "You didn't have to do this," he said. His voice was low, stripped of everything he usually carried. I met his gaze. "Yes," I said. "I did." A pause, longer than before. "You could have walked away," he said. "I am," I replied. That landed. He knew it. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about separation. Clean, final, complete. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't. And that said more than anything he could have. I turned, walked down the hallway, didn't look back. The rest unfolded the way things like this always do, quietly, but completely. His firm suspended him, then terminated him. Clients pulled out, not all at once, but steadily. Enough to matter, enough to collapse what had been built. There were investigations, reviews, more questions, more documents. None of it involved me directly anymore. That was the difference. The line had been drawn, clearly, permanently. As for Lena, I heard about her later, not from Victor, from Allison. "She's filed her own claim," she said. I wasn't surprised. "He misrepresented the structure to her," she added, "on multiple levels." Of course he did. That was the pattern. Not one lie. Layered ones, different versions, for different people. "She didn't know?" I asked. "Not enough," Allison said. I nodded. Not sympathy, not judgment, just understanding. Because in the end, it wasn't about who he lied to. It was about how long he had lived inside it, and how completely it had defined him. The house felt different after that. Not empty, not broken, just mine. I changed the alarm code first, then the locks. Small things, practical, necessary. The kitchen stayed the same, the light, the counter, the space, but the feeling inside it shifted. Saturday morning came again, 9:15. I noticed the time, out of habit. Then I kept moving. No one left, no door closed, no silence followed, just a normal morning. Coffee, light, stillness, without absence. I stood at the kitchen window, looked out at the same street. Nothing had changed. Everything had. And for the first time in a long time, there was no pattern I needed to question, no version of myself I needed to maintain, no system I was unknowingly part of. Just space, clean, uncomplicated, mine. I took a sip of coffee, warm this time, and set it down, carefully, because I understood something now. Silence doesn't protect anything. It only delays the moment you have to face what's real, and I was done delaying. If you've ever ignored a feeling because it was easier than asking the truth, this story is for you. Sometimes the biggest betrayal isn't what someone does behind your back. It's what they build around you without you ever knowing. If this story stayed with you, let me know where you're listening from. And remember, silence doesn't protect you. It only delays the moment everything comes to light.